a conversation. I'm in this morning. This is, again, part of my symbology in 8 sides. I know yesterday at the halftime show, they were singing Bright Like a Diamond. Again, there's a diamond in a square. It's 8 angles. Then there's the 3 angle and the birth of the other 3 angle, which is where the 8 separates and becomes 2 3s. And then there's the orb, and then the intersecting, and then there's the linear fashion of one time frame is a little longer at the arrival of the other while in living form. So this is where my head is at this morning, with symbolically just trying to ground myself before I go out for physical exercise, to try to get the physique back into some, again, there were talks in the beginning of my life about being like Fabergé egg and being a thoroughbred and being meant for someone extremely special who, when my body laid here, I would dream about and I would connect with in cosmic connections to others in the human network, or in the deity network. I'm not quite sure. Cosmic nursery type conversation. I don't know what happened. I still made my mark from this body in this section of humanity, but I do not know what happened to the person that I used to travel with in dream or REM space, trying to fix my future and the future of the cosmic children I was to have. I wanted to fix their visual avatar when they arrived. I was deathly afraid of having children look like the bad blood. And so here we are. And something interfered with my ability to have children the way that I expected and wanted. I'm then thinking of a conversation Lewis came up this morning, alerting me of a number. He gave me a number in the billions of avatars that they've discovered that exist. And then he went on to speak of consciousness, and this God feature. And he mentioned something about a ladder system. Then he went into a conversation that I don't agree with. It doesn't exist at my level of spiritual whatever. But to him, I understand that at lower levels of the ladder, perhaps that's a conversation that they're having to explain the hierarchy of the stars in whatever star war broke out. So there's that. I'm, of course, at the moment in this area. Now, then I'm thinking also this morning, I fast forwarded, we went to bed early. We went to bed on time for my son to get up for school, but taped the Super Bowl so I could see the commercials. And so this morning, though, I watched part of Face the Nation this week. I watched CBS Sunday morning. I shut that off though, because again, not where I'm at. No connection whatsoever. And then I watched CBS This Morning, who references back. I watched David Muir from Friday night about these spy balloons. They use that 5 letter word pattern um, that has some sales market inside of the domestic United States of America territory. Not quite sure how that happened. Like, I'm watching the signals and the signs. Now, on the US dollar, there is ancestry, genealogy, and government. Their faces are on the system of monetary, the mint. There's the US Treasury, there's the US Patent Office, there's ancestry and expectations of what the governors and the government looks like for this particular territory that they've been pronouncing since before I arrived, but certainly while I am here. Um, so on the continental part and the interior part, um, I'm noticing that there was a disconnect between this US part and myself. I don't know why. I've also seen a lot of people on TV claiming to be US members, but they do not look familial and they do not look ancestral to what the visual pronunciation is on the US currency system, which are debt notes, I think that they say, but it ties into a larger whatever. But it very much pronounces what the ancestors of the government looks like. There also has been many documentaries that have been pronounced of who the Roosevelts were, who being Franklin Roosevelt, um, Theodore Roosevelt, then the some of the other presidents, um, and so I see very clearly what genealogy expectation is on the government over these lands. Um, where I'm having a disconnect is in introduction into, and now also what's interesting is they just put up a picture of some minister of defense from Canada, and I'm like, that doesn't look like a Canadian. At least the Canadians that have introduced themselves to me. I've met a lot of Canadians through the real estate network and the conferences within um, the territory that I'm within with that. Um, and they did not look like this person pronouncing themselves on the television. Not sure what that's about. But now the US patents and the US technology seems to be the strongest and largest thing needing to be protected, along with the assets being the people and the ancestry and the remnants of, or the family branches of, the government for this area, which is very pronounced. Same thing with inside of the context of Christianity. There's this one cross, um, and then there's the very, I call it European American, just because that's how it's been presented to me, on what the European American um, Jesus looks like for, I guess, both sides from Europe and from America. Um, and so there's a very clear depiction. And there's Jesus is in a kingdom. So there's that aspect of it, um, that has inherent whatever. Um, but protection of both of those, the visual cues that were given by law and government throughout the ages and decades. When I see that being challenged or trying to be rewritten over, it's very concerning to me. This morning they were talking about a higher vigilance. Um, they're talking about things, spy balloons. I really don't know what that means. Um, that the air defense system is shooting down. Those words frighten me, but whatever on that. Don't know what they mean by those words at a symbolic gesture. So there's these. I don't know what the one. There's one about Alaska, one about Montana. There's one about South Carolina. Maybe I know something about, or maybe I don't. And then there's one in reference to Michigan. And those, for me, are two bad blood possibilities on a different tier of conversation. Um, one goes to a 1975, one goes to a 1976 ongoing issue that I'm experiencing. Um, because, again, on the two dimensional highlight, there's no real actual verification system on my part. I don't know. Those are really actions that are happening. Again, it's really confusing from being left so detached in these rooms, um, without much access to um, things that I very much have needed my entire life. Um, Interestingly enough, when we were in Maryland, we were in together as a family. Um, what I refer to as my Italian American side, but again, they're whatever they are, they're American. So they were speaking. My dad said that when he was in high school, and he went to a private high school that my grandfather paid for, there were people who came into his high school and offered things like access or tracks. What are you interested in? And getting tracks to aviation or car mechanics or whatever it was that they were interested in. He said specifically aviation. And he said one of his friends chose aviation. Um, and I'm thinking to myself, in my only one generation later, that was not offered to me. There was no coming out. I mean, I know I was already slated to have this special child, but I don't understand where the withdrawal of US genealogy and ancestry and almost backup and to take me into the fold and protect me within this US structure. I mean, how far into destruction of it are they? Is it still as solid as it should be? I mean, these are things that really concern me and keep me up at night, or in the morning at least, when I realize just how disengaged they've almost just shut me out. And I saw also on the something about Statue of Liberty they put on the other day, talking Mother of Exiles. I'm like, oh, there's from the French, no less. I'm like, oh, there's a conversation. I don't even want to like. I mean, again, um, I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but over here is that like the U.S. of A. If there's a U.S. outside that functions in some capacity, and then there's the USA, and then for I mean again the bod being whatever the bod is at the BOD, um and so I'm just concerned, knowing how the government was established, what my forefathers were, the forefathers of these lands and of this government and of the US system, and then almost like the complete disappearance. I mean, I see sometimes people walking around, but they don't look. Some of them have, when they wear the US on there and then this flag on their sleeve, they look forefathers correct. But then there's others that do not. So I know it's supported, but again, that gets confusing. Um, so I'm listening to this conversation about spy balloon, and I'm then thinking of where I'm at now and how, like, I mean, again, there's also, like, I hear on the radio talks of like a trust fund baby exists somewhere. Who are these trust fund babies? What does that even mean? Like, are they entrusted and paid by something? Like, where was my trust fund? So, and why don't I have access to tap into that in order to self sustain? I mean, for simple things like rearing children. So, that's concerning. It's concerning the fact that my father was had other people in his vicinity that were being offered this aviation track, but yet in my generation I was not offered the same. um and it's like all these like steers, I feel like, in like an STEER, like steering way, to just drive me off the path so I'm forgotten about. Then I'm thinking about this one time when I got to St. John's. um I think it was before I met Michael. um my St. Mary's rep, that, again, breakfast uniform inspections before school. I'm going to say it's uniform inspections, but he and I didn't say such things. um but technically that's what it was. um there was a bartender. I was invited on something called a field trip to a bar, and there was the bartender who called himself an MVP. Didn't know what that meant. And I was the VIP amongst Maria and Melissa, who came with me on this field trip. It was the three of us. And I was the only one the MVP was recognizing, for whatever he was there for. Um, I don't know if he was in an observation mode of like, what was the relationship between the three of us. There really wasn't any. I mean, I didn't know what, like, we're at this place, not like people, this is what people do. Like, this is where people meet people. I mean, like, how does that work? It really, the meeting people part, like, I was looking for some companionship and someone to start my life with. And I'm like, you come out to these venues of, you sit at a stool at a bar and you hope that the person you're supposed to spend your life with is going to walk through. I mean, logically, it doesn't make sense. And then there was some interaction, conversation between me and the bartender. Um, Again, I wasn't really studying who he was till he started speaking to me. Um, I did tell him he was one of the best looking people I had seen ever in New York, ever, like ever in New York, ever in New York. Um, Whatever that was about. Not that that did me any good, being honest, but here we are. So I'm going to pause this right now and I'm going to go get the reference off of the television. And on the one hand, I'm happy for once my father within the system is mentioning the Avatar piece and then the God piece and the God piece. Because again, like, I just feel like the BOD gets in the way. Really, I do. Um, I just feel like the BOD and the God are somehow in some kind of disarray or conflict, although they shouldn't be. They should be one cohesive measure in order to correct my piece, which I've needed since the beginning. I mean, again, I'm supposed to have this child like Prince of Peace kind of a thing, but they've got me all out in disarray and in some dislodged position that seems counter in like counter to or para to where I should be mounted. Um, but for him, and the disheartening thing is that my father's never given me words of wisdom or words of anything that connected with me or with dots that I already knew to be certain. Um, there was no input of like in wealth management of enlightened and enrichment and stuff. There's just been none of that until just recently. However that happened, I have no idea. Um, so I'm gonna go grab the piece of what's going on in the current events according to the New York televised area. So it's CBS Mornings E31 on Monday, February 13th, 2023. And this is live. Now, what's interesting is at an earlier part of this TV show, where somewhere in this episode, they speak of the Super Bowl. And they announce, because the Super Bowl happened last night, they announce already that where next year is going to be at the 58th, which apparently is in something called Las Vegas. And I'm thinking to myself, I already know, again, in space and time crimes, they're working off of a planning and calendar system, this NFL. I found out there's something called a USFL. There's something called, and then there's the conferences. But these leagues are using this calendar and planning technology while I'm being harmed and being held in a really horrible way for the birth order in. So women have children. Most women make like when they birth their children, they're just singular stars. Then there's layers on top of that. When there's a symmetrical read, it's more significant. Those are like, again, that's where that Fabergé egg piece is for me. Also being the fact that I have the forefathers, I have the homeland advantage here. That's what I was born into, that level of expected privilege, since we have to defend ourselves and homeland. But it's being mistreated and misguided and mishandled. So that becomes a problem that I don't know how to correspond or to whom to address. in what is going on around here. And why are these leagues using my time? If time is money, why are they wasting my entire time and existence here on this earth for playing sport and games? Again, it feels like the BOD at the business office division. If I'm speaking and quoting Dragnet, one of the television Hollywood things with the California reference, why on earth is my time being completely mishandled when they're already planning next year's display, or it's already been handled in I don't even know how many years in advance? Why is my one person being so tragically harmed by all of these pieces that someone at a poli-science degree, mathematical degree of certainty, or a topology, a topiary, already knew when I was younger and could have corrected it and handled it so it didn't get designed into this situation?
Objects over Alaska, Canada's Yukon Territory, and Lake Huron. That's after an American fighter jet destroyed a Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina more than a week ago. So, what's going on here? Ed O'Keefe is at the White House looking for it.
I feel like at this level of conversation, there's vagrancy, residency, and migrancy issues. Again, some were tangled in there as a BOD, and then I don't know how to access the GOD. Like, there are lawmen. I mean, and I was thinking to myself in like quiet, like, the lawmen who know who they are when they arrive, all of a sudden that paradigm of what qualifies as a law man or woman, it shifts because their presence is just felt so differently, and their confidence of what they already know to be so amongst the doesn't even know and is caught out in this whatever this is.
For answers.
What started off as just a Chinese spy balloon shot down 9 days ago,
they just shot it,
is now a much broader intelligence investigation, with even more flying objects taken out of the sky. The fourth banned object was shot down by an F-16 over Lake Huron Sunday. It was first detected Saturday over Montana. U.S. officials described it as an octagonal structure with strings hanging off, and its path and altitude raised concerns. While it wasn't considered a military threat, the Pentagon says it had potential surveillance capabilities, and a top general says they're considering all options.
I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point.
There have now been 3 shoot-downs in 3 days, all since that Chinese spy balloon was deflated off the coast of South Carolina. On Friday, President Biden ordered the shoot-down of an object off the northern coast of Alaska, taken down by an F-22 fighter jet.
Success.
And on Saturday, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ordered the shoot-down of an unidentified object spotted over Canada's Yukon Territory.
Canadian and American fighter jets were scrambled, and an American F-22 successfully shot down the object. Recovery teams are on the ground looking to find and analyze the object.
What's gone on the last 2 weeks or so, 10 days, has been nothing short of craziness.
Now, Democrats and Republicans are pressing the Pentagon and intelligence agencies for more details.
The military needs to have a plan to not only determine what's out there, but determine the dangers that go with it.
I would prefer them to be trigger happy than to be permissive. But we're going to have to see whether or not this is just the administration trying to change headlines.
We should learn a lot more about these objects once the debris is recovered in the coming days. And we should also point out, since the shoot-down of the Chinese spy balloon, radars have been enhanced to better track these objects, especially those at lower altitudes, which may explain, Tony, why so many of them are being shot down. We'll also wait and see whether President Biden himself has anything more to say about all this.
Yeah, a lot of waiting. Hope there's more seeing in the future. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much. We're going to turn overseas now, where the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria 1 week ago are now among the deadliest of the century. And there have, of course, been miraculous rescues.
So again, like, I was listening and, like, without getting, if everybody's flattened onto a calendar, then there's this flat ion, just points of light in some dark space on some calculus that without professional help, you would not be able to tell the difference of whatever. There is that level of life that exists at this time on this planet. And then there is, and that's stripping away all sorts of class systems, all sorts of monetary banking systems, whatever. And then when that happens, there is some, few, as opposed in ratio to the rest, there is stars that, or if those points of light are considered stars, then there's points of light that are shaped differently because they have a different purpose in the universe and amongst and on this earth and in this system. There is a hierarchy and there is a way to tell based if we count stars, if we just count points of light. So on that level and scale of, I don't understand why they've flattened me to appear to look like one of the classless, pointless, just a point of light star in black space. I have much higher hierarchy than just one point of star. I have symmetry, so I have that other caliber, that other classification, which is different, and it's supposed to be integrated differently for a different purpose. But that's, I don't even know, again, who to speak to at that, but where you are birthed and in what order does matter. And currently, with the way, I mean, at a benchmark, at how do you even tell if you're succeeding or not? Well, if I'm sitting in a room, in a series of rooms, with, as a Fabergé egg and as a thoroughbred, or I was supposed to be trained like a thoroughbred and handled like a thoroughbred, where there were interesting expeditions, that I think physical activity involved, but yet I haven't even been able to appreciate that level or experience that level of humanity. It's almost like being forced into a ditch where you're in these series of rooms and now it's like muscle rigidity and muscle flaccidness. I mean, it's something that needs to be handled. I mean, I can't live this way. And now when I go out, it's almost like the frame is so off balance that I can't even get myself back into performance mode. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.